Have you ever witnessed a moment so shocking, so unexpectedly explosive, that for a split second you forget you're watching royalty and instead feel like you're watching a real-life political thriller? Because that is exactly what happened the night Prince William, the calmest, most controlled future king in modern history, leaned forward, stood up, and told Meghan Markle, in a voice heard by more people than anyone wants to admit, "You need to leave. Now." But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine the silence. Imagine the cameras freezing. Imagine the entire royal variety performance, a place built on glamour, tradition, and perfectly timed applause, suddenly holding its breath because of one woman's unexpected entrance. But let's pause. Why did Meghan Markle even show up? And more importantly, why was she not invited? Before anyone could process her arrival, before anyone backstage could scramble to adjust the evening's protocol, and before Prince William could fully register what he was being told through a rushed whisper from a staff member, Meghan had already stepped inside the building. And that was the moment everything began to unravel. Let's rewind just a few hours earlier, because this story doesn't begin with Meghan stepping out of a car like she was making a surprise appearance on a talk show. No. It begins with a storm of rumors swirling around London's media circles, whispers that Meghan had been asking strangely specific questions about the guest list, seating arrangements, and camera placements. Questions that no one outside the formal planning committee should even know to ask. But at that moment, none of that was confirmed, only rumored. What was confirmed, however, was this. Meghan Markle's presence at the Royal Variety Performance 2025 was not authorized, not approved, and absolutely not expected. And that is what makes the moment she arrived so much more explosive. Picture this with me. The red carpet outside the Royal Albert Hall is glowing. Photographers are lined up shoulder to shoulder, and the air carries that charged, electric tension only major British events have. William and Catherine had walked in minutes earlier. Coordinated, elegant, smiling, representing the monarchy exactly as expected. Celebrities followed, actors and singers waved, hosts rehearsed lines backstage. Everyone was in their place. And then, a black vehicle pulls up. No markings, no security escort, no press announcement, no scheduled arrival. The doors don't open for a few seconds, a dramatic pause that, in hindsight, feels almost orchestrated. Finally, Meghan steps out, shoulders back, chin lifted, wearing a dress that screams for attention in a room that wasn't expecting her. You can imagine the first reaction from the closest staff member, confusion, then panic, then the realization, she wasn't on the guest list. Now let me ask you something directly. If someone uninvited shows up at a royal event, how does that even happen? Because this isn't a birthday dinner. This isn't a charity bake sale. This is a royal performance with ministry officials, political leaders, diplomats, foreign royals, and a guest list approved by multiple departments. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is improvised. Which means Meghan didn't just wander in. She didn't just take a wrong turn on her way to another event. She meant to be there. And that intention, that deliberate arrival, is exactly what sent adrenaline through security teams, PR managers, and backstage staff who suddenly feared they were about to be thrown into a scandal that would light up every tabloid across the world. Inside the hall, Prince William and Catherine had already taken their seats. Everything was calm, dignified, perfect, exactly the way the royal couple is trained to present themselves. William, ever observant, had just leaned toward Catherine to comment on the opening act when a senior staff member, pale and visibly shaken, approached him from behind with the quietest possible whisper. It was just a few words, but those few words changed the entire night. "Meghan is here." William froze. Catherine blinked. Once, slowly, her version of a gasp. And around them, none of the audience had any idea that the fuse had just been lit. Here's where the story gets even more intense. While Meghan was making her way through the backstage hallway, 3 different staff members tried to stop her. And each time, according to insiders, she responded with a variation of the same line. "I'm here for the show. I don't need approval." But she did. She absolutely did. And she knew it. What she didn't expect, perhaps, was that William would react so directly, so swiftly, and so unmistakably. Because if there is one thing William is famous for, it's restraint. He has survived media storms, political scandals, family drama, and unending public scrutiny, without ever losing his composure. But this time was different. This time, according to those who saw his face the moment the staff member whispered into his ear, his expression changed in an instant. Not anger, not embarrassment, something deeper, something protective, something that suggested he had been waiting or dreading a moment like this. Ask yourself, what would it take for a future king to break protocol and confront someone publicly, especially someone who used to be part of the family? Would it take a rumor? A security alert? A violation of royal boundaries? A threat to the event? Or something much more personal? Because whatever he was told was enough to make him stand up, literally stand up, during one of the most carefully controlled events on the royal calendar. Meanwhile, back in the hallway, Meghan had paused in front of a mirror, adjusting her hair and checking her reflection. According to a makeup artist standing nearby, she looked calm, almost too calm, like someone waiting for a cue. This is where the contradictions begin. Some insiders say Meghan was there to confront William and Catherine. Others say she came hoping to generate attention and spin a media narrative. Still others claim she arrived expecting permission to be granted automatically because she used to be a duchess. Whatever the truth is, the timing was catastrophic. Because at the exact moment Meghan attempted to walk into the main auditorium, without security clearance, without an escort, and without any official role, Prince William had already begun walking toward the back entrance with a level of determination that startled even members of his personal protection team. Now here's something that will shock you. Several people claimed William didn't even wait for the curtain break or the transition between acts. He moved fast, quiet, purposeful, as if he knew this situation couldn't be allowed to play out in front of cameras. And maybe he was right. Because imagine what would have happened if Meghan had walked into that room uninvited. Every camera would have turned. Every headline would have exploded. Every single iconic performer on stage would have been overshadowed. And every VIP in attendance would have witnessed the monarchy's most uncomfortable moment in decades. William wasn't going to allow that. But the real twist, the reason he acted so decisively, wasn't known to Meghan. Not yet. Not until he reached her. And this is where everything comes to a head. Meghan was seconds away from entering the royal box when William finally reached her. What happened next is the moment people replayed, rewound, rewatched, lip-read, argued about, and analyzed all night long. William leaned in. He said something quietly. Meghan froze. And then, William delivered the line the world cannot stop talking about. You need to leave. Now. But what came next, what Meghan said under her breath, what Catherine saw from her seat, and what the staff reported in whispers afterward, that is the part of the story that changes everything you think you know. And that is exactly where the story goes next. There are moments in royal history that feel perfectly choreographed, moments where every footstep, every smile, every camera angle is carefully aligned to maintain the monarchy's delicate, gleaming image. And then there are moments like this one, moments no one planned for, no one rehearsed for, and no one wanted to witness. Moments where time stutters, the air shifts, and everyone suddenly realizes they are standing at the edge of a scandal unfolding right in front of them. This was one of those moments. The first shock of the night didn't come from a performer. It didn't come from a comedian. It didn't come from an unexpected announcement. It came from a car door. A lone, sleek black vehicle rolled up to the restricted entrance of the Royal Albert Hall. Not the red carpet entrance. Not the VIP guest lane. Not the designated royal pathway. No. This car slid into a private drop-off zone meant only for performers, crew, and security. And from the very moment the wheels stopped moving, something felt wrong. The headlights stayed on longer than usual. The driver didn't exit to open the door. The security team assigned to that entrance stiffened immediately, exchanging glances. And behind the tinted glass? Movement. A silhouette. A familiar posture. Then, a click. The door opened. Slowly. Almost deliberately. And as the hinge reached its full extension, Meghan Markle stepped out. Even if she hadn't once been part of the royal family, even if she hadn't become one of the most polarizing figures in British history, and even if she hadn't spent the past few years blasting the monarchy in interviews, documentaries, speeches, and podcasts, this moment still would have frozen the air around her. Because she wasn't supposed to be there. Not tonight. Not at this event. Not on this stage. Not on that guest list. and everyone at the back entrance knew it. The first person who spotted her wasn't a senior official, a producer, or a royal aide. It was a young staff member, 22, maybe 23, assigned to handle performer check-ins. He had been standing there with his clipboard, scanning the names of comedians, singers, dancers, and orchestra members, never expecting someone of Meghan's status to come through his particular door. He blinked, then blinked again. Then, realizing he wasn't hallucinating, he whispered under his breath, "Oh my God, now, put yourself in his shoes for a moment. What would you do if one of the most controversial women in royal history suddenly stepped out of a car in front of you, wearing a designer dress worth more than your yearly rent, looking like she planned to sweep into the building as if she owned it? Would you freeze? Would you panic? Would you look for your manager? Would you pretend you didn't see anything? Or would you, as he did, step forward with a shaky smile and ask for her credentials?" But here's the problem. Meghan didn't have any. No pass, no badge, no clearance, nothing. She walked straight toward the entrance as if she didn't need permission. And maybe, in her mind, she didn't. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement, rhythmic, confident, echoing off the stone walls. Her shoulders were squared, her chin tilted upward, her stride purposeful. This wasn't the walk of someone who was unsure or hesitant. This was the walk of a woman on a mission. Let me describe the moment from Meghan's perspective for a moment. Not to defend her, but to understand the psychology of what unfolded. She steps out. Cameras from the red carpet won't see her yet. Crew members turn their heads. Security stiffens. And Meghan smirks. The kind of smirk she perfected over years of navigating Hollywood, high society, and controversy. She's not here to blend in. She's here to be seen. Unexpectedly. Dramatically. Preferably on her own terms. But intentions don't matter when protocol has been violated. And this was a violation on a scale that sent tremors through the entire building. The young staffer who first approached her tried to maintain composure. He cleared his throat and offered a polite line he was trained to deliver. "May I check your access pass?" Meghan didn't break eye contact. She didn't soften. She didn't apologize. Instead, she replied with a line that would later become infamous in staff retellings. "I don't need one." Direct, sharp, delivered with complete confidence. A line that, under any other circumstances, might have intimidated a junior staffer into stepping aside. But tonight was different. Because as Meghan brushed past him and stepped inside the hallway, another staff member, older, uniformed, clearly more experienced, stepped into her path. Firmly, politely, but with the unmistakable authority of someone who understands exactly how deep of a mess they're about to fall into. "Ma'am," she said, her voice steady, "I need to see your credentials." This is where the story splits into two versions. Version 1, from staff. Meghan frowned, looked annoyed, and waved a hand dismissively, as if the rules did not apply to her. Version 2, from Meghan supporters online. She was calm, polite, and misunderstood. But the truth, according to multiple eyewitnesses, leaned much closer to version 1. Because Meghan's reply wasn't just dismissive. It was commanding. "I'm here for the show. You don't need to worry about it." This line, this exact line, was repeated again and again in backstage whispers as the night unfolded. And the moment she said it, the older staff member felt a chill run through her. She knew Meghan wasn't on the list. She knew this entrance wasn't authorized. She knew a breach like this would cause chaos. But she also knew one other thing. If she physically blocked Meghan, if she escalated the situation, if she caused a scene, she might be the one blamed later. This is what made the next few minutes so surreal. Security hesitated. Staff hesitated. Everyone hesitated. Because no matter how dramatic the past few years had been, no one expected Meghan Markle. A woman who once held a royal title and lived under Buckingham Palace security protocols, to simply show up uninvited to a royal event. That just didn't happen. Except now it was happening. Meghan walked further down the hallway, her heels tapping like a metronome, counting down the seconds to disaster. And then something even stranger occurred. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her expression changed, just slightly, enough for those watching to exchange looks afterward. Some said she looked satisfied. Others said she looked nervous. But what they all agreed on was this. The message changed her pace. She began walking faster, more determined, as if whatever she read was the confirmation she needed to keep going. Meanwhile, word was spreading backstage like wildfire. Meghan Markle is here. She wasn't invited. She's already inside. She's heading toward the main hall. What do we do? A runner sprinted toward the royal box to inform a senior aide. The aide found another aide. That aide found the event director. And the event director did what anyone in a panic does. He sought out the one man who absolutely had to know, Prince William. But before William received the message, something crucial happened. Meghan reached the internal security barrier, the last checkpoint before entering the auditorium. The guard on duty, tall, calm, military posture, lifted a hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I need your clearance." This should have been the end of the saga. A polite refusal, a quick explanation, a detour back outside. But Meghan wasn't leaving. And just as the guard stepped closer, Meghan's expression shifted again. This time sharper, tenser, more impatient. Whatever she said next was too quiet for most people to catch, but those closest described it as a forceful insistence. She wasn't just asking to be let in. She was demanding it. And that is the exact moment the energy in the hallway changed. Tension rose. Staff stepped back. Security whispered into earpieces. A ripple of unease spread through the entire backstage area. Because now it was clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a lost VIP. This was a deliberate, unauthorized entrance, and Meghan had no intention of stopping. What Meghan didn't know was that at this very second, the staff runner had reached the royal box, breathless, wide-eyed, and already shaking from the weight of the message he carried. He leaned down. He whispered. And Prince William, the man known worldwide for staying composed under pressure, froze. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He didn't look confused. He looked resolved, as if this was the moment he had been expecting, or fearing, all along. He stood up, straightened his jacket, exchanged a quick look with Catherine, a look that said everything she needed to know. And without waiting for the end of the act, without waiting for applause, without waiting for protocol, William stepped away from his seat. What he was about to do would ignite the biggest royal confrontation in years. A confrontation Meghan still didn't see coming. But what happened in the next few seconds, the seconds before William reached her, would set the tone for everything that followed. And that moment is exactly where the next chapter begins. There are moments when Catherine, Princess of Wales, doesn't need to say a single word to communicate everything she feels. She has mastered the art of royal composure, the serene smile, the subtle eyebrow lift, the carefully measured breath. But on the night of the Royal Variety Performance 2025, when she first realized what was happening, her face betrayed something deeper, something unmistakable, something that people close to her would later call the Catherine look. Not anger, not fear, not even frustration. Recognition. She knew. She knew before the staff whispered. She knew before William stood. She knew before the cameras caught the shift in energy. It started with a tiny ripple in the audience behind her. A murmur. A confused rustling of programs. Catherine felt it instinctively, the way someone feels a sudden change in temperature. Royals develop that sensitivity. It's a survival instinct. And she felt the disturbance before she even glanced over her shoulder. But when the royal aide approached, pale, sweating, and shaking as though he was about to deliver news of a national emergency, Catherine turned her head slightly, just enough to catch the tension in his eyes, just enough to sense that something had gone terribly off script. She watched the aide lean toward William, bending low so the audience wouldn't notice. She watched William's jaw stiffen as the whisper reached his ear, and then she watched the expression that crossed her husband's face, an expression she had seen only a handful of times in their 20-plus years together. A controlled alarm. The same expression he had when major scandals broke. The same expression he had when the late Queen fell ill. The same expression he had when the press learned about the Wales children's security breach years ago. Something serious had just happened. And Catherine didn't need anyone to tell her what it was. She knew. She knew exactly who had walked into the building. And she knew exactly what that meant. Now, let's look at Catherine more closely in this moment. Not the public figure, but the woman. The mother. The wife. The future queen. She doesn't panic. She doesn't frown. She doesn't gasp. She doesn't whisper. Instead, she inhales, slowly, quietly, deliberately. A steadying breath. Because Catherine has spent years watching tensions rise and fall inside her family. She has seen the fallout, the drama, the emotional ruins. And she has lived through the Meghan era. The interviews, the accusations, the headlines, the strained relationships, the bitterness that never seemed to fade. So when the aide whispered into William's ear, Catherine didn't need to hear the words. Meghan is here. 3 words capable of detonating the entire evening. Catherine glanced at the stage for a moment, as if anchoring herself in the performance, grounding herself in the event she was supposed to be enjoying. The performers were doing everything right: dazzling costumes, bright lights, voices powerful enough to fill the room. Yet none of it mattered anymore. Because the drama wasn't on stage. It was happening backstage. It was happening behind curtains. It was about to explode into the audience. And Catherine felt every ounce of that pressure. Now here's something the cameras didn't catch, something only those seated immediately beside her witnessed. Her hand moved. It didn't tremble. It didn't fidget. It didn't reach for William. Instead, she placed it lightly on her lap, fingers interlocked, posture straightening by a centimeter. It was the posture of a woman preparing for disruption. The posture of a woman bracing herself. The posture of a royal who knows the eyes of a nation, the world, could turn on her at any moment. Some people underestimate Catherine's instincts. They see the polished exterior and forget she has spent more time inside the royal family than Meghan ever did. Catherine has navigated the monarchy for nearly 2 decades. She knows its rhythms, its dangers, its stress points, and she knows exactly when something is about to go wrong. This was one of those times. The aide's whisper lingered in the air between William and Catherine like a storm cloud. William shifted slightly in his seat. Catherine watched him carefully. Their silent communication, something both have mastered over the years, was on full display. William's expression said, "This can't happen. Not tonight." Catherine's expression replied, "I know. Go." And that was all he needed. But before he took that decisive step away from his seat, Catherine caught something else, something that tightened her chest for just a moment. William wasn't just reacting as a prince. He was reacting as a husband, as a protector, as a man who has endured years of accusations, stories, and headlines tearing apart the relationship between him, Catherine, and Meghan. This wasn't just about protocol tonight. This was personal. But what exactly was Catherine thinking? What went through her mind at that moment? Let's break it down. First, she likely thought of their children. Any royal scandal, especially one involving Meghan, inevitably trickles down to affect George, Charlotte, and Louis. The media frenzy, the school chatter, the commentary online, it all circles back to the Wales children eventually. And Catherine has always been fiercely protective of her kids. Second, she knew this moment would be filmed, interpreted, analyzed, and exaggerated by millions of people worldwide. If William handled it wrong, he would be accused of aggression. If he handled it too gently, he would be accused of weakness. If Catherine reacted visibly, she would be accused of pettiness. If she looked too calm, she would be accused of scheming. There was no winning scenario, only damage control. And third, perhaps the most important, Catherine knew Meghan. She knew her patterns. She knew her timing. She knew her strategy. She knew the way Meghan moved when she wanted attention and the way she moved when she wanted confrontation. And Catherine recognized the signs. Meghan didn't show up because she misunderstood an invitation. She didn't show up because she thought she was expected. She didn't show up because she wanted reconciliation. Her arrival was too calculated, too dramatic, too perfectly timed, too disruptive. Catherine knew that the moment Meghan stepped into the building. Now let's paint the picture of Catherine sitting there, still, composed, watching as William rose to handle the situation. The audience around her remained unaware, their eyes fixed on the stage. But Catherine? Catherine wasn't watching the performance anymore. Her eyes flicked toward the aisle. Her posture sharpened. Her breath steadied. And then, she did something that some said was the most telling moment of the entire night. As William stepped away, Catherine pressed her lips together in a very specific way. A tiny movement, barely noticeable, but deeply revealing. Not anger, not fear, something else. Resignation. As if she already knew how the night would end. As if she had hoped this chapter with Meghan was over. As if part of her was tired of the drama, the tension, the accusations, the endless cycle. But even in that moment of internal exhaustion, Catherine didn't break. She didn't look rattled. She didn't look upset. She didn't look panicked. She looked determined. She looked dignified. She looked ready. That is who she is. And that's why what happened next. The moment Catherine leaned slightly forward in her seat, watching William disappear behind the curtains, is so powerful. Because Catherine wasn't just watching her husband take control of a royal crisis. She was watching history unfold. Staff members began whispering frantically near the wings. A few performers backstage noticed the sudden uptick in activity. Stage managers paused their tasks. And Catherine, still visible to hundreds of audience members but mentally miles away from the show, remained perfectly still. One person seated behind her would later say, "She looked like she already knew what was coming, and she was just waiting for the storm to hit." But why was Catherine so sure? What did she see that others didn't? Here's where an overlooked detail becomes crucial. From her seat, elevated, angled, positioned strategically, Catherine had a partial line of sight to a rear doorway. The same doorway William disappeared through. The same doorway leading backstage. And for a split second, through that doorway, Catherine caught sight of something that confirmed everything she feared. Meghan, standing near the entryway, moving forward. Determined, Catherine saw her. And in that instant, she understood the full gravity of the situation. Meghan wasn't wandering. She wasn't hesitant. She wasn't lost. She was heading directly toward the royal box, the sacred, symbolic heart of the event, a place reserved only for those the monarchy formally authorizes. This was an intrusion, deliberate, bold, and impossible to ignore. And Catherine knew that once Meghan reached that doorway, once she crossed that threshold, once she appeared in front of thousands of people live and millions more watching later, everything would change. The headlines, the public perception, the royal reputation. The fragile peace that had existed, however strained, between Meghan and the monarchy, all of it would shatter. Catherine's heart pounded once, hard, but her face didn't show it. Years of royal training had taught her how to mask emotion under pressure, but internally, she braced herself, because she knew William was about to confront Meghan, and she knew Meghan was about to push back. But what Catherine didn't know, not yet, was that the conversation between William and Meghan would take a turn so sharp, so unexpected, that even she wasn't prepared for it. In that moment, that electric, unprecedented confrontation is exactly what comes next. The backstage area of the royal variety performance is normally a machine of precision. Every role is defined. Every movement has timing. Every person has a job. There is no improvisation in royal event management. Everything is scripted, rehearsed, and verified a dozen times. The very idea of chaos is unacceptable, but chaos is exactly what Meghan's appearance created. Before William even reached the hallway, before Catherine steadied herself in her seat, before the whispers rippled through the aisles, the first real shockwave detonated backstage, among the people who hold the entire event together. It began with a comm headset crackling too abruptly. Then another headset chimed in. Then a third. And suddenly, within seconds, the air behind the stage was thick with overlapping voices. She came through the performer's entrance. "No, that can't be right. Check the list." She wasn't on the list. She said she didn't need clearance. "What do you mean she said that?" "She walked past us. Past all of us." "Is she going toward the auditorium?" "Someone get Director Langley." Now, this wasn't confusion anymore. This was panic. Because backstage staff knows something the public often forgets. Security breaches at royal events are not inconveniences. They are threats. Threats that demand immediate, decisive action. But what do you do when the person breaking protocol isn't a random intruder, but the wife of Prince Harry? What do you do when the security threat is a former duchess with global recognition? What do you do when the person bypassing staff is someone who used to be escorted by those same staff members? There is no manual for that, no training, no protocol sheet. And that is exactly why the atmosphere backstage shifted so violently. Let's go moment by moment. Two stage managers, mid-sprint between lighting cues, nearly collided when they heard the first report. One of them grabbed the other's arm. "Please tell me you're joking," she said. "I'm not," the other replied. "She's inside. Inside. Inside the venue. Inside the restricted backstage corridor." inside the zone where only vetted performers, crew, and royal aides are allowed. Do you realize how serious that is? At events like this, everyone must wear a badge. Everyone. Even people who have worked the show for 10 years. Even performers. Even politicians. And Meghan had none. Not a badge. Not a wristband. Not a QR entry. Nothing. She bypassed every barrier simply by walking through them. Meanwhile, at the stage-left security post, a veteran guard in full uniform tightened his stance. He had been working royal events since the days of Princess Margaret. He dealt with drunken celebrities, aggressive fans, political demonstrators, and entitled VIPs. But never, not once, had he encountered a former member of the royal family showing up unannounced. He pressed a finger to his earpiece and said, in a voice too controlled to hide the alarm beneath it, "Confirm the breach." "I repeat, confirm." A junior guard replied instantly, almost breathless. "Confirmed." "She's heading toward the inner corridor. Intercept." The guard paused, because this was the question none of them knew how to answer. If they intercepted her too aggressively, it could turn into a PR nightmare. Royal guards manhandle Meghan. If they didn't intercept her, it could become a security nightmare. Unauthorized entry near royals. This was a lose-lose scenario. "Stand by," the senior guard finally said. "Hold position. Await instructions." Instructions from who? Who even had authority here? Because even though Meghan renounced her working royal role years ago, she remained, like it or not, a high-profile figure in the monarchy's orbit. And she was the wife of King Charles's son. Until a staff member with higher ranking spoke up, no one wanted to make a potentially explosive move. Meanwhile, Meghan kept moving. She walked with a kind of misplaced confidence. The confidence of someone who had once belonged in these hallways. Someone who had once been greeted by staff with bows and curtsies. Someone who believed she still carried a certain untouchability. And maybe that's why she thought she could get away with walking in unannounced. But the staff knew better. Because if there is one thing the royal household takes seriously, it's access. Who has it? Who doesn't? Who thinks they should have it? And Meghan had none. It didn't help that she chose the most sensitive route, the performers' corridor, which branches off toward both the backstage wings and the royal entrance tunnel. This was the artery of the event, the most controlled and monitored space in the entire building. The lighting crew noticed her first, a cluster of technicians huddled over a monitor. They froze when they saw her pass. One technician dropped a roll of gaffer tape that clattered loudly across the floor. Another whispered, "Is that who I think it is?" A third hissed back, "Don't look. Don't say anything. Don't get involved." But everyone kept sneaking glances anyway, because how could they not? This was Meghan Markle, at the Royal Variety performance, walking alone, without clearance. One dancer, stretching behind a curtain for her upcoming number, straightened abruptly and called out softly, "Is she performing tonight?" The stage manager nearly snapped. No, she is not performing." Nobody speak to her. Nobody approach her. But that was wishful thinking. Because Meghan wasn't just wandering. She was heading straight for the heart of the building. And she was getting close. Too close. Now, amidst this rising storm of panic, there was one man backstage who recognized the danger immediately. The event director, Andrew Langley. A man known for being unflappable. A man who had handled prime ministers, divas, billionaires, and royals. A man who had built a reputation for solving problems before they ever reached the front of the house. Tonight, even he faltered. He saw Meghan advancing down the hallway and whispered, almost involuntarily, "Oh, bloody hell." Langley sprinted toward the nearest supervisor. How did she get in? No idea. Who let her through? No one. What do you mean, no one? She just walked. Langley pinched the bridge of his nose. He looked like a man who wanted to teleport out of the building. "This is a royal performance," he said. "You can't just walk in." But she did. It was at this moment that the full weight of the situation hit him. Meghan Markle was not a random gatecrasher. She wasn't a lost celebrity. She wasn't a confused guest. She was a ticking time bomb, a potential public relations catastrophe waiting to erupt in front of an audience of thousands and a global media machine. And if she reached the auditorium, it would be too late. Langley's hands trembled as he lifted his radio. "Code copper," he said. "Not code red, which signals a physical threat. Not code silver, which signals a medical emergency. Not code blue, which signals a technical failure. Code copper. A code used only when someone without clearance breaches royal proximity. Only a handful of staff even knew what code copper meant. That's how rarely it was used. That's how serious it was. When the call went out, the backstage chatter stopped instantly. People froze in place, mid-task. Performers paused and rehearsed poses. A lighting operator halted her cue mid-tap. Code copper meant someone is too close to the royals. Someone who shouldn't be. And that someone was walking confidently toward the inner ring. The secure zone William and Catherine entered through earlier. Meanwhile, Meghan reached the first internal checkpoint. The velvet rope leading toward the stage-left VIP tunnel. A guard stepped forward. "I'm going to need you to wait here, ma'am." Meghan didn't slow, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge the instruction. "I'm joining the audience," she said, her heels clicking against the marble. The guard stiffened. "You can't go through there." Meghan stopped. Finally, she turned her head, tilted it slightly, the way she often did when she felt challenged. "I'm here for the performance," she said, enunciating each word like a schoolteacher correcting a child. "You don't need to worry about me." But he didn't need to worry. He was trained to worry. He was required to worry. And while he stood there, trying to figure out how to uphold protocol without causing an international incident, Langley arrived, breathless. "Ms. Markle," he said, trying his best to sound calm. "I'm afraid this entrance is restricted." Meghan blinked. "I'm not going backstage," she said. "I'm going to my seat." Her seat? Her seat? She didn't have one. Langley swallowed. "With respect," he began, "you're not on the list." Meghan's eyes sharpened. "I was told I could come." "By whom?" he asked. She didn't answer. A pause. A stare. A tension so thick you could have sliced it with a stage prop sword. Behind them, staff members watched in rigid silence. No one dared move. No one dared whisper. And everyone knew. If Meghan pushed past this final barrier, the royal box and William were less than 30 steps away. At that exact moment, somewhere deeper in the building, William was already moving, fast, determined, and unaware that he was only seconds away from the confrontation that would define the entire night. Because while Langley tried desperately to halt the situation with words, William was about to end it with action. And when these two forces, Meghan's determination and William's authority, collided, everything backstage would erupt. For years, Prince William has been known for one thing above all else: control. Control of his temper. Control of his public image. Control of every word, gesture, decision, and reaction. That composure wasn't just cultivated, it was necessary. He grew up under a microscope, lost his mother in front of the world, learned to walk royal lines so thin they were practically invisible, and inherited the role of future king long before his heart was ready. So when William reacts abruptly, when he stands without warning, breath quickening, jaw set, eyes narrowing, you know something unimaginable has occurred. And that is exactly what happened the moment the aide whispered those three destabilizing words. "Meghan is here." William didn't ask for clarification. He didn't assume it was a mistake. He didn't laugh or shrug it off. He froze. Not physically. Physically, he was a statue, but mentally, something locked into place. Something that only comes from years of navigating familial conflict layered with public scrutiny. Catherine saw it instantly. She'd seen it before. Not often, maybe only a handful of times, but enough to know. This was not merely irritation. This was not annoyance. This was not discomfort. This was threat mode. A mode William rarely enters. A mode only triggered when something compromises safety, dignity, or the monarchy's stability. And tonight, all three were in jeopardy. The aide leaned back, stepping away as quietly as he had arrived, leaving William and Catherine encased in a bubble of tension so sharp it hummed. For a few seconds, William didn't move. He didn't breathe. He didn't speak. Then he exhaled, slowly, deliberately. And Catherine recognized the inhale that followed. The inhale of decision. She spoke without speaking. Her eyes asked the question, "Do you need to go?" Williams answered, "I don't have a choice." And that was when he stood. He didn't rise gradually or politely, the way royals usually move during a performance. He stood like a man whose instincts had snapped awake. A man who'd just been told a security breach was heading straight toward the auditorium. A man whose wife and entire audience sat vulnerable mere meters away. William is protective, ferociously so, and that part of him had taken over. Catherine didn't touch him, didn't hold him back, didn't whisper caution. She simply lowered her chin in agreement. Go. William stepped into the aisle, head slightly lowered to avoid drawing attention. But the few spectators who noticed him could tell something was wrong. His posture wasn't relaxed. It was razor straight, purpose-driven, tense. A royal aide joined him immediately, whispering more details as they walked. She bypassed 2 checkpoints. She refused to stop. Security is holding her at the inner corridor now. William's jaw clenched. Where exactly, he asked. Near the VIP tunnel. The worst possible place. That location was dangerously close to the royal box entrance, the same tunnel William and Catherine used earlier, the one guarded more heavily than any other access point. Has she entered the auditorium? William asked. Not yet. Not yet was not good enough. Not for William. Not tonight. He sped up. Staff parted like water around him, stepping aside instinctively. His presence alone demanded space, but tonight, he wasn't moving like a royal performing ceremonial duties. He was moving like a man intercepting a crisis. As he rounded the first corner, a senior security officer approached. Sir, he said, saluting. We're containing the situation. Containing? William repeated. There was no anger in his voice, only disbelief. How did she get inside? Where was the barrier? The officer swallowed. She walked through it. William's eyes flashed. The officer continued quickly. We didn't physically block her because she's Meghan, William finished. Silence. Everyone understood what he meant. No one wanted to be the guard who restrained Meghan Markle, a woman whose fan base was global, outspoken, and unrelenting. A woman who had weaponized media appearances before. A woman whose allegations had already shaken the monarchy on multiple occasions. One wrong move from security, and the headlines would explode. William knew that. He also knew something worse. If Meghan reached the auditorium, the chaos would be 10 times bigger. So he asked the question that chilled everyone around him. Is she alone? The officer hesitated. This hesitation was an answer in itself. Tell me what you know, William said, voice low. We saw no security detail with her, the officer replied. She came by herself, unaccompanied. William's eyes narrowed. That made no sense. Meghan never traveled alone to a public space. Not after the Oprah interview, not after the Spotify fallout, not after the South Park controversy, not after any of the chaos of the last 3 years. Did she speak to anyone? William asked. She spoke to staff, the officer said, but she didn't tell anyone why she's here. Did she expect a seat? A spotlight? A moment on camera? Or something else entirely? William didn't have time to speculate. Where is she now? He demanded. Inner corridor. Less than 20 steps from the auditorium door. 20 steps. That was too close. William began walking again, faster now. His stride lengthened, shoulders squared, expression tightening into something almost unrecognizable. If Catherine had seen him in that moment, she would have known instantly. William was done being passive, done being tolerant, done hoping for diplomacy. This was no longer about family drama. This was about protocol, safety, boundaries, control. 2 more aides joined him as he neared the inner corridor, whispering updates. She insisted she has a seat. She attempted to pass the guard. She says she was told she could attend. She won't show credentials. She's asking why she's being stopped. William stopped walking. He turned to the aide. Repeat that, he said quietly. She asked why she's being stopped. That was the sentence that pushed him over the edge. Because Meghan knew why. There was no universe where she didn't know. She wasn't naive. She wasn't confused. She wasn't misinformed. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she was playing dumb to get through the barrier. William inhaled sharply, then continued walking. When he reached the end of the corridor, he paused for half a second, not to reconsider, but to prepare. He needed to enter the situation in complete control. He needed to remove Meghan before she caused a scene, without creating a scene himself. He needed to handle this with precision. But the moment he turned the corner and finally saw Meghan, everything changed. There she was, standing under the bright backstage lights, surrounded by frozen staff, facing the velvet rope that separated restricted access from the auditorium. One hand on her hip, one eyebrow raised, a cool, irritated expression on her face, as if she belonged there, as if everyone else was overreacting, as if she were merely being inconvenienced. William's blood pressure spiked. Because in that instant, he realized something. She wasn't planning to wait. She wasn't planning to ask. She wasn't planning to negotiate. She was planning to walk straight through. And that is when William made a decision he never wanted to make. He would confront her directly. Not through aides. Not through staff. Not through whispered messages. He would handle this himself. William stepped forward. Everyone froze. Security straightened. Staff stiffened. The air turned electric. Meghan heard the footsteps, turned her head, and her expression faltered. Not much, but enough. Enough to show she hadn't expected William. Not this quickly. Not face to face. William didn't hesitate. He closed the remaining distance in 3 strides. He stopped only a foot in front of her, and in a voice low enough to avoid echoing, but sharp enough to cut through the air, he said, "What are you doing here?" Not hello. Not how are you. Not there must be some mistake. What are you doing here? Meghan forced a tight smile. I'm here for the performance. William's eyes hardened. You weren't invited. Meghan exhaled, annoyed. I didn't need an invitation. William stepped closer, not threatening, but unmistakably authoritative. You do, he said. And you should know that. The tension was palpable. Staff watched with silent dread. Security pretended to look elsewhere while listening to every word. Meghan lifted her chin. I have every right to be here. No, William said. You don't. Those 4 words hung in the air like a blade. Meghan blinked, stunned, not by the words themselves, but by the tone. This wasn't the diplomatic prince she sparred with in interviews. This wasn't the quiet William she had mocked to Oprah. This wasn't the cautious man terrified of media backlash. This was a future king drawing a boundary. She opened her mouth to respond, but William wasn't finished. You need to leave, he said, voice steady as stone. Meghan's breath hitched, but William leaned slightly closer, finishing the sentence in a way that left no room for debate. You need to leave. Now. And that was the moment everything shifted. Meghan's confidence cracked. William's authority solidified. The staff's fear evaporated into action. Security stepped forward, ready to escort. But what came next? What Meghan whispered back, softly, bitterly, sharply, is what sent the night spiraling into absolute chaos. And that is where the next chapter begins. When someone shows up somewhere they're not supposed to be, people talk. When someone famous shows up uninvited, people speculate. But when Meghan Markle, a global lightning rod for controversy, narrative battles, and PR storms, appears at a royal event she was expressly not invited to, speculation becomes a wildfire. And it didn't take long for the backstage whispers to morph into something far more potent. Rumors. But not the kind of petty gossip you see in tabloids. No, these were rumors whispered by staff who'd seen things. Rumors murmured by insiders who'd noticed patterns. Rumors that made William's reaction make a lot more sense. Because apparently, Meghan didn't just show up without an invitation. She showed up with a purpose. But before we get to the truth, we need to start where the rumors began. Picture the backstage hallway after William confronted Meghan. A cold silence hung in the air. The staff were stunned, security was stiff with tension, and Meghan's expression, a mixture of disbelief and wounded pride, lingered long after William turned away. But the moment she disappeared from sight, voices began to rise. What was she doing here? There's no way she just came for the show. She was waiting for someone. She kept checking her phone. She asked about seating arrangements. She was looking for the royal box. And there it was. The first thread pulling loose. The first hint that Meghan's sudden arrival had a motive, a calculated one. Because according to one makeup artist who had been standing near the corridor when Meghan walked past, she overheard Meghan asking a question that raised eyebrows. Has the royal box been finalized yet? Finalized. As if she expected last-minute changes. As if she expected a seat. As if she planned to be seen near William and Catherine on purpose. Another staff member swore Meghan asked about camera angles, specifically the ones facing the audience during applause breaks. Why would she ask that? Why would she care about camera angles? And why would she show up at the exact moment when the royal entrance had already happened? Let's pause for a moment and look at the timeline. The royal variety performance is choreographed down to the minute. The royal couple arrives at a predetermined time, never early, never late. The press knows when to expect them. The cameras know where to pan. Everything is predictable, which means one thing. If Meghan wanted to appear at the same moment William and Catherine entered, She would have known precisely when to arrive. But she didn't arrive then. She arrived 10 minutes later. Conveniently late. Dramatically late. Strategically late. Late enough that she wouldn't be on the carpet beside them. Late enough that she would appear unannounced. Late enough that her arrival would be noticed independently, not overshadowed by William and Catherine. That timing wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. And that's where the first rumor begins. Meghan wanted a moment on camera. Not a scheduled one. Not an official one. Not a respectful one. A dramatic one. A surprise entrance. A headline-making disruption. A shot of Meghan Markle suddenly appearing during a royal event she had every right to attend. It would have dominated social media. It would have overshadowed the show. It would have reignited Meghan versus monarchy debates overnight. But there was another rumor, one far more serious. One that made William's reaction turn from shock to urgency. A staffer who worked near the corridor claimed that Meghan kept looking at the backstage monitors. Not at the stage, not at performers, but at the screen showing the audience. And she allegedly asked the technician beside her, "Where's the seat map?" Seat map. As in seating chart. As in who sits where. As in whether the royal box had empty seats. Now think about this. Why would Meghan care about empty seats? Unless she believed she should be sitting in one. Another staffer confirmed that she asked, "Is there space for one more in the front row?" The front row. Right in front of the stage. Next to VIP guests, dignitaries, and, most importantly, in direct view of every camera. Who asks that at a royal event they weren't invited to? But that wasn't even the most alarming rumor. This one came from a producer who overheard Meghan talking to her phone. She wasn't exactly whispering, but she wasn't speaking loudly either, a half-private tone that still carried down the hallway. The producer swore she heard Meghan say, "Don't worry, I'll make it inside." Inside. Not, "I'm here." Not, "I made it." Not, "I'll see what happens." I'll make it inside. As if the goal wasn't to watch. As if the goal wasn't to support the event. As if the goal wasn't simply being present. The goal was entry. Into the auditorium. Into the audience. Into the royal box's line of sight. But why? Why would Meghan risk the humiliation of being stopped? Why risk the PR disaster of appearing uninvited? Why risk headlines questioning her motives? Unless she believed she wouldn't be stopped. Unless she believed someone inside the building would allow her entry. A contact. A staff ally. Someone with access. And believe it or not, that rumor circulated too. One usher claimed Meghan told him, "I was told I could come. Someone arranged it." But when asked who arranged it, Meghan didn't answer. Staff whispered furiously. Who told her she could come? No one. That's the problem. She's lying. She was misinformed. She misunderstood. She's manipulating something. But the most contentious version came from a senior royal aide who received a strange email earlier that morning, supposedly from an anonymous account, asking, "Will Meghan Markle have access to the royal box tonight?" The aide dismissed it as a troll message. But now it looked like someone was planning something. Another rumor suggested Meghan was filming something. A personal documentary project, a behind-the-scenes project, or a secret camera stunt. Did she expect confrontation? Did she want tension? Did she want the drama to unfold on camera? One staff member swore Meghan had a small mic clipped beneath her dress strap, something barely visible unless you were inches away. But here's the rumor that made William's face go cold when he heard it later. Meghan asked a staff member, "Has Catherine arrived yet?" Not William. Not the royal couple. Not the audience. Catherine. As if Meghan was not there for the performance. But for Catherine. Some said Meghan wanted to confront her. Some said Meghan wanted to prove something. Some said Meghan wanted to appear on camera in the same room as Catherine, forcing tabloids to run side-by-side photos again. But the darkest rumor, the one whispered only after Meghan left, was that she wanted to embarrass Catherine publicly, to show up, uninvited, unannounced, unstoppable, and appear perfectly composed while Catherine reacted. Imagine the storyline. Meghan arrives gracefully. Catherine looks rattled. Meghan shows up. William snaps. Meghan attends for the art. Royals act territorial. Narrative manipulation. Something Meghan mastered during her media war with the palace. But here's the part of the rumor that staff kept repeating, the part that made everything click. Meghan wasn't holding a ticket. Meghan wasn't holding a pass. Meghan wasn't even holding a purse. She was holding her phone. Just her phone. As if she was expecting a call. A message. A cue. And moments before William reached her, her screen lit up. Someone contacted her. Someone timed it. A brief message. A 2-second glance. Meghan sped up afterward. Was someone inside encouraging her? Or was she coordinating something? No one knew. But one rumor, the biggest one, kept rising above all others. Meghan came because she believed she could force her way back into the royal narrative. Not through reconciliation. Not through peace. Through spectacle. A dramatic re-entry. A surprise appearance. A moment that would dominate headlines globally. Meghan knew the rules. She knew the boundaries. She knew she wasn't invited. But she came anyway. Not because she misunderstood. Not because she was misinformed. Not because she thought she had a seat. Because she wanted one. And she believed she could take one. But what Meghan didn't know, what made her plan unravel instantly, was that William already knew about one detail that she thought was secret. One detail that made him sprint toward the corridor. One detail that made him speak with such force. One detail that turned this entire night into a confrontation. And that detail is the exact cliffhanger leading into the next chapter. There are moments in live events when the atmosphere changes so suddenly that you can feel it. Not hear it, not see it, but feel it, like a wave crashing through the room. And at the Royal Variety Performance 2025, that moment came the second the backstage cameras picked up something they should never have seen. Meghan Markle, inside the building, walking toward the auditorium entrance. But this wasn't happening in silence. This was broadcast, unintentionally, to the backstage monitors, the production staff, and at least 2 of the live feed review screens used by the editing crew. It took only one camera angle, one accidental pan, one glimpse. And then the gasp started. Not from the audience. They were still blissfully unaware, but from the crew behind the scenes, the people who knew exactly what that image meant. Because Meghan's presence wasn't just unexpected. It was impossible. A breach. A violation. A spark inches away from igniting a royal explosion. Let's break down the exact sequence that turned whispers into alarm. A Stage A camera operator was adjusting his lens near the left wing, preparing for the next host transition shot. The host was delivering a joke about budget airline seats. The crowd was laughing politely, and everything seemed to be flowing smoothly. Then the operator shifted left, just slightly, to reframe. And there, in the background, inside the inner corridor, walking with a kind of determined grace that only Meghan could embody, she appeared. For a moment, the operator froze. He blinked twice. Then he zoomed in, almost reflexively, to confirm what he thought he saw. It was her. Meghan. Alone. Inside the restricted access hallway. He grabbed his headset. Can someone confirm something for me? I think I'm seeing something unusual in the corridor. The line crackled. What do you mean unusual? The operator swallowed. Meghan Markle is backstage. Silence. Not a normal silence. A paralyzing one. Repeat. Meghan Markle is backstage. This time, 3 voices answered at once. What? She's not on the guest list. She can't be here. But even this wasn't the moment that caused the panic. The panic came 30 seconds later. Because one of the production assistants, a young woman named Sarah, hit a wrong button during the scramble and accidentally routed the backstage camera feed to a monitor located much closer to the auditorium. Not the main screen, thankfully, but close enough that audience members seated near the technical control booth could see something they weren't supposed to. On that screen, Meghan appeared again. Walking. Calm. Composed. Head high. Entering the frame as if she belonged there. 2 people in the nearby row gasped audibly. Is that? No way. She's not invited. What is she doing? They weren't whispers of excitement. They were whispers of disbelief. Meanwhile, the camera operator tried desperately to pull the frame away from Meghan, but the moment had already happened. The backstage crew was buzzing. The technical team was panicking. And somewhere in the auditorium, the host on stage felt a subtle shift in the air. A ripple. A disturbance. A disturbance caused by a woman who wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that building. But the real explosion came from the VIP balcony area. The place where foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, and celebrity guests sat. Because as news traveled row by row, seat by seat, person by person, something dangerous happened. People started turning their heads. It was subtle at first, a slight lean to the left, a glance over the shoulder, the tightening of posture as individuals responded instinctively to the whispers forming around them. And then, the widening eyes, the covered mouths, the shocked murmurs. Meghan Markle is here. She's inside the hall. She's backstage.